Hey, I'm Carson James, and I wanted to talk just for a minute about mashing. Some of you guys might have heard of that, and some of you may not have. As far as I know, it's a term that I just kind of made up. But what it is, it refers to horses. And what mashing is a really good explanation of it is, you know how like when guys join the military, they go to the boot camp and they really mash on those guys for however long? Well, the reason they do that is to get those guys to where they will not break when life isn't perfect. So like when a situation gets exciting or scary or troublesome, mentally they'll keep it together because they've been mashed on and they've been basically just taught to adapt to those situations. So when I talk about mashing on a horse, I don't mean it in a bad way. What I mean is exposing him to something that's a little outside of his comfort zone, so when real life happens one day, he's not as surprised or reactive or doesn't get as bothered by it. So another example is let's take a colt. And an analogy I use is pretend you have a wash rag that's just drenched with water. Well, a lot of people will wring the wash rag a little bit to get a little bit of water out. And in this case, the wash rag is the horse, and the water that's in the wash rag is all of the scaredness and potential for bucking and all that kind of stuff. So they'll wring it just a little bit and they'll get some of the water out, but they don't wring it really tight. So there's still a lot left in there. So then when they get on this colt to put his first ride on him, he just blows up or bucks or whatever. And some horses that aren't colts will do this because they still have a lot of water left in them that has not been wrung out yet. So just think of it like a wash rag. If you take it and wring it really, really tight, it's going to squeeze every last drop of water out of there. So when I talk about mashing on a horse, what I mean is you can't do it like they do in boot camp because that would, in the military, because that would fry their minds. But you can gradually mash on your horse a little bit here and there, and over a year or so get him to where he can handle more and more and more without getting frazzled or bothered or upset or anything like that. So just kind of keep in mind, the tighter you wring that wash rag, the more water is going to come out until eventually there's no water in it at all. And that's what you're going for when you mash on your horse. It's a very gradual thing, and it's still done with timing and consideration for the horse. If you over mash on one, then that'll just be what they call overexposure, and you don't want to do that. So you just read your horse and you try to fit the level that he's at, mash on him just as much as you can without crossing that line. So an example of mashing would be, we were at a clinic a while back, and there was a lady's horse who was the horse was just real tense at his neck and had real big eyes, not a real soft expression or anything by any means, but she went around during the clinic for a while, and then during the lunch break or something, I asked her if I could borrow a horse just kind of for a quick little demo, and she said, "Oh yeah, sure." So I got the horse from her, and I said, so everybody's, seen this horse being ridden around, and, for the most part, he looks pretty okay. He hasn't bucked or ran off or anything, and everybody said, yeah. So I said, all right, well, check this out. So then I kind of ran towards the stirrup, jumping a little bit, and I ran at it kind of fast, and that horse went nuts. He just started running sideways and kind of rearing up and things like that. And those people said, the owner, she said, "I never in 100 years thought he would still be that spooky." And I said, "Well, yeah, but you've probably never mashed on him like I have with a little bit of heat, putting a little heat on him where you run in there kind of quick and be kind of fast around him." She said, no, I always move really slow and try really hard not to upset him. Well, see, that's the reason that it was so easy for me to get him to really kind of go nuts. All I had to do was jog towards his ribs and jump a little bit. And see, it's because he had never had that exposure. Every time people had been around him, they had always moved really, really slow and cautious and trying really hard not to do anything. But that's kind of the worst thing that you can do. You want to be extremely casual, and then once they can handle it, you're overly casual. So that would just be an example. So I took the horses, started jumping up and down and doing some sporadic things, and I kind of just hung in there, and when his feet started to settle, I would ease off. And anyways, then after a few minutes of this, he was pretty much just cool with it all. And then that was a really good example of mashing, because we got him to where he could handle a good bit more in, you know, a 5-10 minute period.